Okay. All right. So completion list. What is the completion list?
Hold on a second, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Ted, are you recording? You are recording. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So completion list is, for me, something that I found is unique to GASPAR'S. So for GASPAR'S, it marks the beginning of the closeout of the project. So it's a list of outstanding items outlined in the original contract and change orders. And I'll get into more of this as I progress. So completion list is not a punch list, because a punch list generally occurs after the project is completed, while a completion list occurs prior to the project's completion. And so the project isn't complete until the completion list is fulfilled, minus the warranty and new items. Why do we compile a completion list? We want to make sure that we are completing all contracted work, so that when we hit the completion date, the homeowner has verification that all contracted tasks are completed. Thus, they are excited to hand over the final payment. It also helps you stay organized and track your remaining budget and hours, so you can ask for additional labor. If you're needing help, if your completion list is 5-6 pages long and you need help, you can ask for it and compare it to how much labor you actually have remaining on your budget. And you can also, it also adds, it's a list for, so like Michael's coming to help me today, and I'm going to give him that completion list and basically run through that with him, so he knows his tasks once he gets on site. So it really utilizes your time and your helper's time efficiently. So who does the completion list involve? It involves the homeowners. They are going to be signing the document for the document to be officially completed. And they're going to be reviewing the work at the end of the job. And they're going to be walking through the completion list with you. And so they know what's going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. The project lead. So we're going to be filling out the presentation, or filling out the document, presenting it to the homeowners, and create a plan to complete the task, and then actually complete the tasks. And then it's also going to involve your project manager, and your project manager is going to help support in creating and presenting the completion list. Any questions so far or comments? Okay. Where do you find, oh, go
Jonathan,
ahead.
I got a quick question. When would you start putting this together? Is it like last week of the job, or does it come a little bit before that, or
Yeah.
when would you normally start putting it together?
Well, that is in 2 bullet points down. So get there in
I'll
a
wait
second.
2 bullet points then.
Okay.
I had one for you, Jonathan.
Yeah.
Who has looked through their scope of work and realized that 601 or 602 has different scope than what is in their signed estimate, because the homeowners either took an increase or decrease option, or they changed their mind, and so 602 was written, but that they haven't been tracking what those changes are. I'll put my hand up on that. Anybody else have that experience?
Yeah.
So making sure that you're looking through that stuff too as you're compiling your completion list.
Yeah, and as you're going through the various contracts, you can see, well, you can also start filling out the homeowner's manual stuff too. So, and it'll help fill in any of those documents of grout colors and paint colors and all that stuff as well. And then, so this completion list, you can find a blank copy in your project binder under the completion list tab, on Builder Trend in your field book, and then completion list, or at the office on the K drive somewhere. I haven't done that route, so I don't know where it is, but I'm sure it's on there. All right, so going to actually filling out the completion list, I began filling out about 3 weeks prior to the scheduled completion date because we're going to be presenting it to the homeowners 2 weeks prior to the scheduled completion date at the weekly meeting. So I aim for 3 weeks ahead. Usually it's a couple days prior, but I like to at least get it going. Because inevitably there's a lot of things I'm trying to keep track of in my head, and the completion list helps me consolidate and put all that on a piece of paper and have it in one place, everything that I need to do. I'll start by handwriting the document. So I'll take that blank document in the project binder. I'll start filling out that by hand, and then I'll go online to get that Excel document and fill it out via the Excel document. And that way it's neat when you present it to the homeowners. It doesn't have all its scribbles yet. And it's better organized. So I know when I'm handwriting it, I tend to miss stuff. And so I go back and fill in the gaps, and then it looks like it's just as messy as what's in my head. So it doesn't actually help me at the end of the day. So typing it out and then posting it to Buildertrend prior to the weekly meeting, so that your project manager can see it and your homeowner can see it, and they are prepared for the actual weekly meeting in which we have the completion list. And so there's no actual agenda that you have to put together for that completion list weekly meeting. Your agenda is the completion list. So how do you fill out the completion list? You'll want to gather your signed contract and all your approved change orders. Print them out, have 5 screens, whatever helps you, but have those on hand, and then going through the documents line by line, marking items completed with a check mark and writing on the completion list all items that still need to be completed. So I'm going to toggle between my current completion list for PIROG to help kind of walk through filling this out. So this is the project that I'm currently on. We just had our completion list meeting last week and a half ago. And so I'm now in my almost last week of the job.
Heading into the last week.
I don't know.
Just glazing over, right? And actually, that really good point in there, Jonathan. As you're getting into that last week of the job, what's highly likely going to happen between in your workload as one job is wrapping? What else is typically going on?
I'm starting another.
We're starting another, right? There tends to be some overlap as schedules push, and so your response is perfect. Man, I'm going in 10 different directions. It's just a nature of where we're at. So another nice thing about the completion list is you don't have to think about it. It's already there, and you can just, does anybody ever have that where they're going through their day going, what was I just doing? Right? Because my brain's going in so many different directions. It's a place that you can refer back to and be like, oh, I need this. This is where I was at. Here's what I'm going to do methodically. And you probably don't run through it item by item linear, but that's a good point. Sorry, continue.
That's fine. So here's the completion list for PIROG. These are Isaac's notes. So while I'm going through the completion list, Isaac is taking notes on it. I'm taking notes on mine as well. And then this is the one that's been uploaded to Buildertrend, because this is the copy that has the homeowner's signature. So that first column is your what item number is happening, and that's a good way to, when we're referencing, either the homeowner wants to reference an item or project manager or myself, I can say, hey, look at line item 12, and is it done yet or something like that, instead of having to go through the whole document. So that's a good organization. Completed column, when an item's completed, you get to check it off. And the more check boxes, the merrier we are. Area. So this is how I've chosen to organize my project, is by area in the home. Because I have multiple rooms, so this is a kitchen remodel, and then it also includes a master bathroom, hallways, doors everywhere. So I've done it this way. You could do it by the cost code checklist. You could, whatever way works for you that is clear. So starting off with permits. So we want to start there because those are the most important things. And if we don't have those at the end of the project by the completion list, we're not completed. So I actually have final plumbing, electrical, and mechanical all today. Because it's the same inspector for Mercer Island, so that makes life easy or difficult. I don't know which.
And that's a really good thing to think about too, Jonathan. What would tend to happen if, so your completion date currently, which it doesn't say on the completion list, funny, we could probably update that, but your current completion date is next Friday. What would happen if you were trying to get all of your permits signed off next Friday?
Well, undoubtedly the inspector will call something out. So doing it a week ahead of time, I may not be fully demobilized or fully done with everything on the list, but getting all that today and a few days ahead of time allows for me to call back my subcontractors and be like, hey, this needs to be fixed. This needs to be fixed. So it gives me time to still hit my completion list.
Yep.
So I tend to put, I don't know, usually I put in the top right corner where it says date, I'll put the completion list or the date of the project completion there versus the meeting date. So that might be able to change.
Yeah, I think we could put that's a good point. We could put another line. I would love that to be the date that the list was made, because if we update the list, let's say there's some more items and we redo it, we'll change that date so that it identifies it's a different list.
Okay. Yeah.
Would we like a completion date on there? Would we like a completion date line? I will put that on the form if you would like.
I don't know. You could, Steve. I'm kind of in the template right now, so I can add it to it.
Could you just add it where it says completion list? It could say completion list for, and then the date.
Completion date, done.
Yeah. Yeah, so permits, demobilization, which includes homeowner's manual, completion celebration, then exterior stuff, doors. So just kind of showing you the way that I've categorized everything that works for me. So yeah, and even putting all the little tiny things, like I need to say repair a scuff in a wall or a dent in a wall or something like that. Or, one of the doors didn't have his hinge stops on it yet. So somebody opened the door and put a hole, a dent in the wall kind of thing. Putting that on there too. So then yeah, task, either general or specific with those tasks. And then I use the notes in the next column, maybe to be more specific about what actually needs to happen with each of those items, or seeing the repair soffit. I noted the change order, just as a reference to be able to go back and say, this is where it's coming from. So you can kind of work with that, but this list, I find it was a lot for myself, maybe like 75, 80% for myself. And the rest is for the homeowner and project manager. So make this list to the way that you find most helpful to yourself and that's actually going to be useful. Because as I'm, over the next 2 weeks, I'm taking notes on it. I'm adding stuff to it. whatever it may be. And so I'm utilizing this list, working from this list for the next 2 weeks as I close out the project. And then in the CW and N, let me go back to, let's see, columns. So that's column 6 here. C stands for completion. So these are tasks listed in the contract and change orders to be completed by the completion date. So as we're adding change orders and stuff, it pushes out our completion date because it means that we're going to complete all that work at our intended completion date. So if you're not going to be complete in time, talk with your manager. Do we need to make a zero cost schedule change order so that we can accommodate everything that needs to be done? And the completion date might also help you realize, like, I'm not going to be completed by then. I got too much to do and we need to talk about schedule again. So better to do this earlier, rather than a couple days before and be like, oh, I'm not going to hit my completion date. So that's part of why we're doing it 2 weeks out as well. The next letter is W for warranty. So tasks that you may not complete before the completion date due to an item on back order, damaged good needs to be replaced, unforeseen condition. So at my job, Crystal, or somewhere in the delivery process, I did not get the floor to ceiling oven cabinet, this 7-foot tall cabinet that's 3 feet wide. Somehow it got missed. So that's not coming until after the completion date. So I'm putting a W next to that item. Let's see, where is it at? Maybe the next one. There it is. So install oven cabinet and toe kick. I got a W there. And then based on Chanel's work or email about cabinets, this is the scheduled date of arrival to the office. So notifying my homeowners that it's going to happen after the project or after the completion date, and this is when it's going to happen. I have temporarily installed those ovens so that they have them working for the time being, rather than leaving out because they like to cook. They're invading the kitchen already and I'm not done yet. So I turned off all the breakers so they wouldn't use it, but then the inspector needs it. So I had to turn them on, and then the homeowners are like, oh, we're going to use it. So that's warranty. Any questions about warranty? Okay, and then N is for new tasks. So tasks that the homeowner asks for via a late change order that would not necessarily affect the established completion date, such as the homeowner changing their mind about hardware, wanting a different heat register, stuff that's minimal, that's not going to impact the job as a whole, that you can come back later that's small and say, hey, we can, like have a heat register. Sarah came into the job at Hewell and was like, we should do a new heat register, and it was on back order and took a few weeks, but we're not going to change the completion date just because of that heat register. So that falls under the new category. And then the next column is company, who's going to be doing the work, GASPAR'S, Service Plumbing, electrician. That's also nice to know. One, because you need to follow up with them, and two, because I just have to look at what's labeled GASPAR'S and make sure I do that. And it takes a number of the items off the list. So even though my list is 5 pages long, it's really only it's a few less because some of them are by electricity or service plumbing or whatever. And scheduled. When are you going to be doing these tasks, basically? I tried in the past to put a date for every single little thing, but I never listened into it. So I no longer waste my time with the little things and just say they're going to be done by the completion date. But some of the bigger things like when are my subs going to be out? I want to put that on the list. When, when are warranty items going to come in, tray dividers, cabinet toe kicks, stuff like that. When are those going to come in? So I put those on the schedule to give the homeowner and myself a good idea of when those things are going to be happening. And then when I have completed the tasks, that's the last column, write in the date that you've completed it. Check the box and you are golden. on that.
Hey, good morning. I'm Austin.
Kevin,
Hey, nice to meet you.
so what's the plan here? I saw it.
Let's see.
Thanks,
So how
Tom.
do you present this document to the homeowners? So print 3 copies to bring to the weekly meeting for the project manager, the project lead, and the homeowner. I attach, if possible, to a daily log a day or 2 prior and ask the homeowner to review ahead of time. I expect that they already have a punch list going, so it's a way for them to compare the two. And it helps calm their nerves, because it lets them know that we are aware of all the tasks that still need to be done. Especially if they're living in a house, they are already living in the space that we are working in, and they're picking everything apart. And a lot of the times I've realized that I now have to say, like, when something's not done, I have to explicitly say that in my daily log. So that they're not coming back and saying, hey, what about this? And I go back and say, oh, I'm not done with that yet. Because they think once it's installed, it's done. But it's not usually. And then keeping in mind the upfront contracts, when we explain this document to the homeowner, what is it? Explaining what it is, the last list of tasks. It's a signed mutual agreement between GASPAR'S and the homeowner, explaining that what makes this project complete and ready for final payment. So once we've completed all the C labeled items, that they are going to be handing over the final payment. Or in this case, with Pirog, we split it up because we don't have that oven in yet, and that's a oven cabinet. That's a big item, so we're gonna withhold $10,000 from the final payment until we've put that in. And why do we do this? For mutual assurance that all contracted tasks are complete and final payment is expected on completion date. And the last thing is that this is a living document. So homeowners and GASPAR'S can add to and modify items as necessary. This isn't set in stone. So we can add to it and modify.
One thing to keep in mind with the last piece, Jonathan, and I totally agree with you, it is a living document, is I kind of explained to it is like, it's the line in the sand that it says, here's what we're getting to. Obviously we can add to it. Drastic, huge changes to that document. We had that on a couple of projects in the past where the homeowners came back with a laundry list of items after the fact. It is obviously a different situation. So it's really important as well to try to hit that document with as much information as you can get, as you can add to it. I think at Pirog, Jonathan, you nailed every single one of her items that she brought up as we went through it, which was pretty cool, because then you totally buy that. You've bought that homeowner's confidence in the next step, because everything that they had seen, we already had listed.
Yeah, and that helped me have confidence, because I always get nervous when the homeowner's like, oh, I got a completion, I got a punch list. I'm like, oh, shoot, hopefully I've gotten everything. And it was halfway through, she had printed out her own copy and she only had 3 of the 5 pages. And she was like, oh, I still have more. She said she had more in her punch list. And I was like, oh, I still got 2 more pages. So she was like, oh, okay. And then I hit every one of her items. So for me, I felt like I did a pretty good job with that completion list. But sometimes, there's other things that the homeowner's like, hey, while you're here, can you also do this? Like, can you mount this TV? And I'm like, sure, probably not until the very end of the job because I got to take care of everything else first. But if I have time, I will help you out with that.
Nicely said, Jonathan.
Yeah, she asked me this morning about that. She's
Well,
like, Mike talked to you.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, I can ask the gallery, you know, when a homeowner asks you for something small toward the end of the job, it's really hard to say no, right? No, I can't do that. But that's a really good way to say it, which is, hey, you know, my push right now is to get our list of tasks done. And if I have any extra time after I get that done, I'd be happy to help you with that task. Full unwilling, knowing that you probably won't have time, but you can assess it at that point in time, right? And it gives them you're kind of saying a soft no.
Yeah. And then it's also a win if you're like, hey, I got some time, or like, I'll stick around for 20 more minutes at the end of the day to do something like that. But it helps them to know, like, you know, that you have your priorities and that you're trying to get this project done. And that hanging a picture while it's necessary is not the most important thing in the world at this point. So take notes on the document during the meeting. Either have your project man, you know, you take notes and your project manager take notes, get their signature. And Isaac and I talked about this the other day about the signature part. We can talk about it a little bit more, but post the document to Buildertrend with the notations and the signature, and then utilize this document through the completion of the job, reviewing it daily, adding to it, whatever you need to do. But use this to, you know, and if you've done this list well, you won't have to go through all your documents, and your homeowner won't have to go through all of her documents. Then you'll be done by your completion date, if not sooner. So.
And then the most important part, well, okay, maybe not the most important part, but one of the important parts that comes up with this list is the homeowner wants to pay you. Has anybody had that experience where it's like the last day and you walk in and the homeowner's like, here's the check, like first thing?
Yeah.
That is like awesome.
Rather than them holding on to it and be like, hey, you still have these things to do. I'm not going to give it to you yet. Dangle a carrot in front of you.
And if we're not done with those list of items, we're not going to collect the final check. And hopefully, if we know that that's coming in regards to like the oven cabinet, we'll have a conversation that says, hey, we'll collect part of it and then you'll hold on to this until. I think, was that the end of your presentation, Jonathan?
That is, yep.
Nice job. Thank you so much. Okay, round of applause.
You're welcome.
Oh, yeah, everybody's quiet.
I got one quick question. Has anyone experienced using this list as a way to kind of head off the homeowner punch list? I used to do something similar, and I found that if I got it to them ahead of time and it was thorough, I would sometimes get homeowners that would just look at my list and they're like, oh, well, you're finding more stuff than me, so I'm just not even going to look for stuff. Has that ever happened?
It's kind of the point of it, right? Which is why you're doing it that 2 weeks-ish ahead. Great question.
Yeah, I think it depends on the homeowner. Some are super preemptive and they've started, you know, punch list 3 months, you know, from the very beginning of the project. And others are last minute and they're like, oh, you saved me from having to do a punch list because you did your completion list. So I think a lot of it too depends on the homeowner. But also letting them know that we are, you know, even ahead of 2 weeks, you know, doing maybe 3 weeks or so out, your week before, be like, hey, next week I'm going to be doing this completion list presentation, so it'll have everything, you know, it's like a punch list, but not a punch list. And then being preemptive about that, so you can tell them ahead of time that this is what we're going to be doing as part of our, you know, as part of what GASPAR'S does.
Anybody have any other questions?
Yes, I do have a question. Do I have, I mean, should I get a complete completion list too, or not yet?
Explain, Luis. Should you get a completion list too or not yet?
Yes, because I don't have no paper on my book, on my notebook.
Okay.
I think he's talking about a form, a completion form.
Correct, the completion form.
Yeah, they should be in every book that go out, but if you don't have one, there was 3 spots you can find it. There's a blank, well, maybe there's 2 spots you can find it. Jonathan, you had that up above, right?
Yeah, it's Builder Trend and the K drive at the office.
And you probably, Luis, can
Oh,
also
got
reach
it.
out to Steve and he can print you a blank one.
Just to note,
Nice.
guys, the completion list is in the job lead notebook.
It's also a separate Excel file now, Huck. Sarah,
Gotcha.
Sarah took it out because people couldn't find it in that awesome document.
Fair enough.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
It looks, you may have answered it, but just to be clear, it looks like when the homeowner's signing the completion list, when you first present it and have your completion list meeting versus having all the items checked off and then they sign it. It's my first, they're signing the list as an acknowledgement that these are the items that need to be completed and they sign at that point, or?
Yeah, the point of the signature is similar to the point of a signature on a change order. We want them to agree, right? In principle, we want them to say, yep, we've reviewed this on this date and I'll put my signature that I agree that these are the items outstanding. Jonathan and I were talking about this this week actually, and I would open it up to the rest of the group just to say, hey, what do you guys think about this? Because what ends up happening invariably, and correct me if I'm wrong if you guys have a different experience for those of you who've done it, you present a completion list, you review it with the homeowner, and then over the next week, there's a few items that trickle in that you see, or there's some additions that add to it. So one thought was that we present it to them and we go through the whole list and we compile it. And then we come back the next week with it updated to sign. I kind of think I'm going back on what I was thinking. Jonathan and I were talking about this, which is I kind of want them to sign it at that point. And the whole point, John, is that they are signing it going, oh, okay, cool. This is what we're agreeing to. In their mind's eye, it's a shift that, hey, we're going to completion and we're trying to get done with the job. So if there's anything outstanding, I should bring it up.
It's also an opportunity, I think, for them to speak up or at least put their goggles on for things that we may have missed that they're expecting. And at least we have a little bit of a time frame for us to react, you know, if it's something we need to do or a change order or whatever. I think that getting them in that mindset is important.
Does anybody have adamant vehement to the word punch list? If you don't, let me give you a visual. It's just been a term that's thrown out, but as I see it, it's the homeowner punching the contractor and being mad at them for all of the stuff that the contractor didn't do. Derek knows exactly what I'm talking about as he's shaking his head in there. It's a punch list, right? So the reason we don't want to use that term, in fact, you'll see me at that list as you say a punch, a completion list, as you say a punch list. It's not a category in a that we use on there. It's the homeowner wanting to punch the contractor. That is, if you can get through that, then maybe we can start getting out of using the term and use completion list in its entirety. And the idea is that it's done before.
Is it a possibility to take the punch list off of the Costco checklist?
It's not on the Costco checklist.
Well, not on, I mean on our estimate. You know how it's down there at the bottom.
On the estimate comparison?
Yeah, why is it there if we don't use it?
Yeah, so just so you guys know, we did not create those category numbers. So that is an international recognized category numbers, the 12,000, the 15,000. That is not one we have. We can probably get rid of it, but Chris, just don't use it.
Well, I never use it. I'm just saying if it's in front of your face a lot, you might have a habit or a sense that you might inadvertently say it. That's all I'm saying.
Sure. Totally. But if I can give you the visual, maybe that'll help.
Cool. So we got 15 minutes before we need this. I leave for the handyman side. Should we do safety, Steve?
Yes,
Well, I'll just
we
say,
will do
any
safety.
other questions before we move on? Jonathan, I'll give you a thanks for putting that together. I really appreciate it. Nicely done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
nice
thank you.
job, Jonathan.